We could. I mean, if he's on Brewdog Dead Pony Club. That's pretty good. I remember for I think it was Christmas. This past Christmas, Fran got us all Brewdog advent calendars, and that was one of the most fun things to do for the whole month of December. Was just open up every day and get a different Brewdog flavor. It was so much fun.
Fantastic.
Oh, it was great.
That's good. I don't know if I've had that before.
I think that's their session drinking one, if I remember.
Is it?
I think
it's
so.
Good.
Yeah,
it's very similar to Punk IPA.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit lighter, so maybe it is a session one, but yeah, that is nice.
Yeah.
Right, so yeah, it says saddle up for session.
I thought so. I thought it was the green one.
Yeah, so I guess it's a kind of a session version, slightly weaker version of Punk IPA.
Yeah.
Because it does taste like Punk IPA, but yeah, it tastes a little bit lighter. Well, I think I could get on with that.
Good. I would hope so. And then I'm drinking Old Mount cider. It's strawberry and pomegranate. I don't usually drink a lot of cider, but this is quite nice. It's not too sweet. It's got nice flavor. I can get on with it on a sunny day. It's quite nice.
Excellent. Okay. Right.
So, Dad, it's been quite a while since we've done any podcasting, and this is our first ever foray into the video version, which is amazing for those who can now actually see us. This is what we look like. We are not catfishing you. We're real. We're very real, and we look exactly like our pictures. And the reason we got together is because we both have a love for a very incredible film, which has had a really, really good sequel. I think it was, a good 40 years, almost. 40 years it took. Obviously, they weren't working on it the whole time, but, what we're talking about today is The Shining and Doctor Sleep. Oh, man. Fantastic stuff. I mean, we had, I think we got to start by just jumping into The Shining with, it was Stanley Kubrick, isn't it? Or is he the one who wrote the book, or is he the one who made the movie?
Stephen King wrote the book.
That's right. Can't believe I've just completely blanked that.
Stephen King actually wrote both books, so he wrote the book that Doctor Sleep was based on as well.
Yeah, that's why it is officially the sequel.
That's right. Stanley Kubrick directed the first movie, The Shining, and so lots to say about Stanley Kubrick just right there, but we'll park it for the moment. But for me personally, Stanley Kubrick is definitely. I've got two favorite directors probably, and he's one of the two. Well, the other one will be Alfred Hitchcock. And they both got different
very
styles.
Distinct styles, yeah.
Yeah, they both got different styles, but they both make fantastically entertaining movies. Alfred Hitchcock more of what they call an auteur director, kind of very much a storytelling, pretty straightforward movies. Thrills and spills, just really well packaged and following a straightforward path. Whereas Kubrick is much more complex. Again, good storytelling stuff, but there's lots more kind of packed in. There tends to be a lot more packed into his films, and The Shining is a classic example.
Definitely.
Of that. We may get time to talk about some of the examples, but obviously
I
for me,
so.
The Shining.
I think to help out, do you know any other films off the top of your head that Stanley Kubrick has made, just to help kind of paint a picture for those who might not have seen it?
Absolutely. So, I mean, probably apart from The Shining, probably his most famous film would be Space 2001. The Space.
Yeah.
What is that?
A Space Odyssey, isn't it?
Space Odyssey. Yeah, 2001. Yeah. Sorry, Space Odyssey.
Yeah. I definitely can see the parallels. I can definitely see that style. Absolutely.
And again, one of the all-time best ever films, and which has aged extremely well. 1968, that was made. So yeah, I mean, if you've not seen that, if you have seen that, you'll get where we're coming from, because it's just an incredible piece.
Yeah, I never even connected those dots, but no, that I could definitely see that now. That's yeah. He just has that style down to a T, but it's just so gripping the whole time. Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah, and again, so much packed in there, and so many references, and it's seemingly straightforward story, but there's lots and lots and lots you can kind of deeply dive into. So he made that particular film combined with in terms of writing it, combined with the classic sci-fi author Arthur C. Clarke. They kind of did that as a collaboration and in terms of the writing of it, and then it was Kubrick turned it into the classic that it is today. He also, Stanley Kubrick also made Doctor Strangelove, or how I got used to Doctor Strangelove, or I'll get the subtitle for you in a second. But so Doctor Strangelove, equally, just kind of an incredible, groundbreaking film from the 1960s. This time a comedy, a spoof, a political satire, which Peter Sellers, of course, made some incredible performances, and that was in 1964. How I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb. In fact, that was meaningful back in the 60s, that particular statement, and it hasn't been meaningful for a long time until this year, when we're all starting to worry about the bomb again. thanks to the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah. True. That's a it's a way to tie it together, I suppose.
and then going back even further, there's films which are probably less well known, but still absolute classics of their genre. Paths of Glory, which was a movie about the First World War, about futility of war, really. And Kubrick he's dabbled in various genres, as you'll see. Another one that everybody will know about, I'm sure everybody's heard of, sci-fi. Again, just a groundbreaking sci-fi. Clockwork Orange was Kubrick again.
Yeah.
So the list goes on. He just hasn't made. I think what was it? Full Metal Jacket. I think Full Metal Jacket. I think that's his as well. In terms of another war movie, which is a classic Vietnam War movie. He really hasn't made a bad film. Even his kind of closest to being Turkeys, were still brilliant films in their own right. Just an incredible director, and his films are very entertaining, very interesting, very gripping, full of kind of messages and deep references, and which we'll talk about today. Some of the things, certainly from the example of The Shining, but just entertaining as well. Just he hasn't really made a doozy. His last film was Eyes Wide Shut, which some people would find a little bit peculiar, but again, it's very much it's got all the Kubrick elements to it. I was going to say, in terms of an example of, some might consider a Turkey, but it's still a brilliant film, really. If you look at it, a classic war epic was Barry Lyndon, and then I haven't even talked about a film which, as soon as I mention these film names, most people will know straight away. Lolita, absolute classic movie based on a classic novel. Spartacus, come on, the original Kirk Douglas Spartacus. Who hasn't heard of Spartacus or seen it? This is a man, this is a director who I think just about everything that comes out of him, or has come out, he's dead now, of course. Everything that's come out of him has just been an instant classic, and for good reason. He's a director who's paid very close attention to every detail, and this is where something he does have in common with Alfred Hitchcock, with every detail of the whole film, and he just makes sure it's just actual cram packed with quality in every area, from cinematography to storytelling, to the acting, the effort and the energy he puts into it. It just tells. So anyway, that's to give you some background to Stanley Kubrick.
That's wow. That really helps paint a fantastic picture. Because I know quite a few of those films. I don't know all of them, sadly, but just based on the ones that I do know, it's quite interesting to see that his style, although obviously depending on the kind of genre he was making, it still does have his touch where he's like, okay, we have to make sure they understand this stuff is going on. We have to, this has to be profound. This has to be this has to be that. And I think it's a great segue for us to actually jump into discussing The Shining. So I think first off, we have to just immediately commend Jack Nicholson's performance, because you see this man go from the most suave, calm, very collected, willing to kind of do whatever he has to do man, who's also a husband and a father. He was a teacher, if I remember right, and they don't really tell you that he's a recovering alcoholic, but you kind of get the sense that he's got a little bit of alcoholism in him. It doesn't feel like it's dangerous, but apparently that's a thing. I didn't really notice, but whatever. And you see him just kind of, it's amazing, because in films these days, whenever anybody goes kind of like deranged, it's usually much snappier. It's much quicker. You kind of might see the notions, the little hints and signs, but it's more of like a quick instant. Like this character completely changes in a day. Whereas over the course of the film of The Shining, you see Jack Nicholson's just demeanor completely change, and it's very gradual. It's not like one day he's just suddenly like, I'm going to kill everybody. But like, there's all these hints and signs and things like these little giveaways, and it doesn't fully click in your head that okay, he might actually hurt somebody. He might try to kill somebody. It just kind of, it just builds and builds and pulls you in, and the way he performs, it just staggeringly incredible to watch. This man, he's just he just carries the performance incredibly well.
He does. Again, superb actor. In pretty much everything you can see him in. But I totally agree. And the interesting thing, what he's saying about the fact that the story of the Jack Torrance character that Jack Nicholson plays is that it's just a really slow, steady, gradual kind of breaking down, unraveling of this human being. And I think that's the basis of the original Stephen King book. Stephen King wanted to write about that. I mean, I think that's the key thing. He wanted about the unraveling of a human being, of a human mind, and a very, very slow disintegration. And I think the part of what was going on with him when he wrote it was that I think he was going through some pretty messy stuff in his life at that time. I think he was going through a divorce, or at least a separation from his wife. He took himself off to the Stanley Hotel, which is what in Colorado, near Denver, Colorado, to kind of isolate himself from the world and kind of sit down and write his opus. A little bit like the Jack Torrance character, except he was on his own in that, not in the hotel, but not apart from away from his family and things like that. And I think it was very much a reflection. He wanted to kind of, I suppose, he wanted to kind of dive into his own sense of everything in his life, unraveling right about that. The interesting thing, apart from the fact the Stanley Hotel, which is based on, and we can talk about that as a segue, all kinds of things we can talk about that, is that he absolutely hated the movie. He really hated Stanley Kubrick's portrayal of the film, his representation of the film, because basically Stanley Kubrick took it and made it his own. He put his own stamp on it. He did massively in certain areas, kind of not change it, but he kind of, he took it in his own direction. He changed certain aspects to it, which just Stephen King really didn't like. And if you read any other Stephen King story, you'll know that Stephen King does things in a very, very slow pace. I'm not a big fan, especially of that really slow pace in movies like It, stories like It and Rose Red, where the things just go so slow. He's so pondering over how he gradually, and I think that's a key thing that Kubrick took away from it. Remove that pondering pace. You still get the sense, as Nathan's saying, that it's a kind of a slow, steady dissolution of the Torrance character. You still get that sense that it's not a rapid thing, it's a gradual thing, but it doesn't have to take, we don't have to have two volumes at 2 hours long before we actually get there, which is the thing that annoys me mostly about Stephen King stuff. And so I'm kind of on the Kubrick side. I'm a Kubrick fan. I like some of King stuff, but I'm not a massive King fan. So I've got to say, Nathan, I've just discovered that I've got there's a limitation on this thing. It only goes for 40 minutes, and we've only got 5 minutes of those left on this Zoom. Otherwise, I have to upgrade.
I think it's okay because we can end this one and start another one, can't we? And just do it again.
Well, we can give it a shot. Yeah, definitely. Talking about the pacing, we talked about the fact that I did want to touch on the fact that Stephen King really hated this version of The Shining, but I kind of popped that in there. And it's
also it also, like in classic film fashion, differs from the book, but not like fully. But there's definitely quite a few because I remember hearing about this online, as you do most days. Somebody was like, "Oh well, the end of the book, The Shining, Jack instead of Jack going deranged and getting lost in the frozen hedge maze and everything, he something kind of snaps in him, and he was neglecting the boiler, and it kind of just kept kicking over, and it was just like too much, and it basically blew up and burnt the whole place down, which then changes in Doctor Sleep, because obviously like in the film Doctor Sleep they do go back to the hotel, but apparently in the Doctor Sleep book it's more reference, but they don't really do a lot with it. Whereas in like the
Yeah,
film Doctor Sleep, it's quite a crucial element to the actual story, which is great.
absolutely.
Yeah, but we'll get to the Doctor Sleep stuff later on. But I thought that was quite interesting. And then another thing I didn't know was apparently the hedge maze in the film is very important. In the book, not so important, but it's because in the film the whole idea of the horror aspect of this is it's psychological. It's even though there are like the ghosts and everything, it's not so much about the ghostly aspect, which was more important in the book. That was kind of the big point, was like the place was haunted. That's what's driven people crazy. That's what's made all this stuff happen. In the film, it's more about like the psychological cabin fever and then all the different problems that happen, and the ghosts just add on to it. But apparently they were topiary animals, like hedge animals that were cut out, and those came to life in the book, which
Mm.
does not happen at all in the film. Not even
Right.
referenced. That they're just no topiary animals at all, which is just quite interesting to see. That's so different, because apparently they attacked the people at one point. And it's like, well, you think that could have been in the film, but it just wasn't even remotely referenced or anything. So another
No.
interesting difference.
Well, I mean, these are the things that Stephen King disliked about the film. Is that Stanley
Too much
Kubrick made so
change.
many changes. Yeah, and he did, and Stanley Kubrick didn't apologize for that at all, and he did take it. He took it the direction he wanted to take it. It wasn't meant to be a direct, book to film.
Yeah.
He very much used the book as a reference for something he wanted to, a message he wanted to say. And if you want to take a look at what did he want to say, what was Stanley Kubrick trying to say in this film, there are many different views on this, and they're all published views, and you can see, you can go on YouTube and you can find all kinds of videos. But in particular, what I'd strongly recommend is a documentary movie called Room 237, which presents at least five or six different opinions about what The Shining was really about, what the deeper message was about. And it could be anything from the Nazis to,
Oh wow.
to,
Okay.
to the annihilation of the native Indian population, there's any number, to the moon landing, the fake moon landings. It's about, they'll give you all kinds of views, and some seemingly wacky views, but very compelling
Some of them.
arguments and examples. So strongly recommend. And let me try this opportunity to. I don't know if you give me permission to share screen, but I'll show you a quick.
I can if it pops up. It's fine.
I'm going to go. I'm going to just show you the movie itself. I recommend the documentary. I think it's freely available these days on
Room 237. Yeah.
on YouTube. Yeah,
Probably is.
That's the movie right there. I'll get the share screen thing. If it lets me. Or maybe you have to do it. I don't know. I'll try it. Yeah. Right, you've disabled. You've got to go right click on share screen, and you've got to give me permission. You've got to allow all participants to share their screen. You see that?
I think so. Yep. Try it now.
Right, and this is a documentary. This one right here, Room 237. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, great. Very interesting documentary. I mean, you don't have to watch that documentary to read any of the wacky interpretations of different aspects of the film or the whole film entirely. You just go on YouTube and just put "What does The Shining mean?" And there's dozens upon dozens, and there's some really fascinating, interesting. Some of them clearly conspiracy theories, but interesting interpretations of what goes on, and answering some of the questions. The interesting thing about Kubrick is he leaves you guessing on certain things. He puts some really interesting things, and there are definitely a lot of them in this movie. A lot of things where you go, oh, wait a minute, what's that all about? Like the ending of the movie, for example, where the focus. And I don't want to shit. This is a spoiler alert for anybody who's not seen it yet. But I expect most people watching or listening to this would have seen it.
Hopefully,
but at the end,
by now, yeah.
There's a zooming in on at the hotel, and there's a photograph on the wall of the hotel.
Yeah.
And right at the end, there's a zooming into a photograph from the 1900s.
1921. Yeah.
Yeah, from 60 years earlier. and he is, and in amongst the crowd, right at the front,
Is Jack Torrance.
Jack Torrance, which is just brilliant. And that's one of many parts in the film where, wow, what the heck?
It's just one of those things that makes you think, and you're like, well, hang on a minute. And that's the beauty of a Kubrick film. It's always making you think and think and think, and it doesn't fully tell you, but it's like, oh, the pieces are here. If you want to you could come up with your own ideas, but that's where it leaves you, which is, I mean, it's a great way to end it, especially because I think we also have to mention how Room 237 is significant, not just because it is also a documentary, as my dad was saying, but also in the film, the hotel where Jack is caretaking over the winter is the Overlook Hotel, and one of the rooms they're not supposed to go into is Room 237, and that's because I think it was either a family was murdered there or some negative thing happened there. If I remember correctly in the film, there's a lady who basically drowns in the bathtub in that room, and so they've like locked it off and stuff because like that room's real bad. You don't want to go in there kind of stuff. So that's interesting that they decided to name the documentary after the taboo room.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually it's quite, which reminds me of the scene early in the film where we're starting to find out about what The Shining is, and about Danny, the boy Danny's special
Jack's son,
talent, Jack's son, and about the cook who starts to telepathically communicate with him, and then they have this conversation where they're discussing The Shining and what it's all about, and this ability to be telepathic and see things, have visions of the future and other things, and in that he's saying, and then he goes, "What's so special about Room 237?" And the cook says, "Nothing special about Room 237, but you don't have any right to go in there. You've got no need to go in there, so you just stay clear. Don't go there." So that's kind of the sense. That's where you get the sense that, okay, there's something special about this particular room.
Exactly.
And it's been reinforced. Of course, Danny, doesn't heed the warning.
No.
And that was another Stephen King, one of his little foil. It's so many little things niggles he has with this film, but one of them is that I think even that it wasn't. There was a special room in the book, but it wasn't 237. It was, he had another number. I can't remember what it was.
Oh wow, that's silly. Just to even change a room number. But I guess to give everybody a quick rundown in case they've either forgotten or they just kind of want a quick little idea of what's going on in the film. So it follows mainly Jack Torrance and his family, his wife Wendy, his son Danny, who has the interesting talent, if you will, called The Shining. He didn't know what it was called, but he can hear voices. He's got a special friend, but quite frankly, I don't know if there's anything to the friend. He calls him Tony, and he uses his finger to voice him. Don't know if that has anything to do with The Shining. That could just be an imaginary friend kind of thing. But Jack gets a job at the Overlook Hotel over the course of the winter to basically take care of the hotel. He moves him and his family in, and basically they're like, oh, okay, we have had a caretaker go through cabin fever, lose his mind. He hacked up his family in this hotel and stuff. So you got kind of a negative spin on it to start with, but it's like, oh, but you'll be fine. Just do the work. You can write your book because he's an author who's like, oh, this job sounds perfect. I basically have all this time to write my book and carry on doing the stuff I wanted to do, still with my family and everything. And basically over the period of time, you see events unfold. You see different ghost patrons that used to live and work at the hotel or were killed in the hotel. Like there's the twin girls. They're quite an interesting one. They're the daughters of the original caretaker who hacked up his family, which is quite. I didn't realize that until I rewatched it, which was quite something, because I was like, oh, no, there's a bunch of ghosty people, but, they might have just died because of whatever. But it was nice to see kind of some connections being made. I think his name was Grady. And then later on at one point, when Jack's really starting to lose it and he's kind of getting more meddling with the ghostly stuff going on, there's a big old party in this grand empty room that's, empty, but it's full of the ghosts all doing a party and stuff. And one of the waiters bumps into him, spills Advocate on him, takes him into the toilet, cleans him up, and he's like, "Oh, that's very kind of you. What's your name?" And he goes, "Oh, it's Grady." And he's like, "Grady?" He's like, "You were the caretaker here." And he goes, "No, I've always just been a waiter. I've never taken care of the place." And he goes, "Yeah, you were the caretaker before me. You went crazy and you killed your family." And the ghost guy's like, "Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, Jack. You're losing your mind," kind of stuff. And eventually he's like, "Your son is Your son's trying to interfere with the way things are here. You need to do something about that. Which you can see kind of weirdly, anybody would be like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. But for Jack, he's like, huh, I should really give that some thought. So that was one of the interesting turning points I saw for me was the fact that the guy who previously killed his family, went nuts at the place who was caretaking, is now convincing Jack to essentially do the same. And Jack's not fighting it. He's kind of like, I'll think about it. It's just quite interesting to see that.
Well, what's interesting on that is that, and you may not have picked up on, is the fact that, and I didn't pick up on certainly the first few times I watched this film, is that in that scene, and I'm going to play that scene for you in a minute if that's okay.
Yeah.
And in that scene, he's the guy that's the waiter accuses him of no, he accuses the waiter of being the guy that did the murder. So okay, the key about this is, and you've obviously got to pay attention because, like I said, I missed it 2 or 3 times myself before realizing when Jack learns about the murder of the family and all the rest of it, the guy that the previous caretaker had murdered his family. That's at the start of the film.
Mm.
And at the start of the film, you hear what you got to realize is that he's told the guy's name was Charles Grady. The waiter gives his name as being Delbert Grady. And of course, all Torrance hears is Jack Torrance hears is the Grady bit.
Grady bit, yeah.
So you're the caretaker that killed, and he went, no, I'm pretty sure that's not the case. Although there's clues obviously after that, whereby the guy gives away that clearly is the case, because he was saying, my family misbehaved, and my wife didn't listen to me and my daughter, so I corrected them. So he clearly, there's kind of reference there to the fact that he is. But if I let me play this, if I could, I'll just play a quick clip so we can see that scene, what it looks like.
Yeah.
I've got to share my screen, haven't I? Hold on a second. This might be interesting. We can do this. And if we can do this, if it lets me. Let's see if it lets us do this. Here we are.
There is no sound.
Can you hear it?
No.
He says no sound.
Correct.
Oh, it's annoying.
I think it's because you can hear it, but we cannot.
I wonder why that is. Let's see if we can figure that out.
Yeah, you would have thought with sharing my screen, you could still hear everything.
Yeah, you thought so, wouldn't you?
Is there anything? Just... Yeah, I could just choose the sharing stuff. I can't do anything about sound, I think.
Let's see if I can do something on the sound side. Let's me share sound. Right, try this.
Delbert Grady.
Yep, that's done it.
Good timing. Now he's figuring out Grady. I've heard that name.
Mr. Grady, haven't I seen you somewhere before?
Why, no, sir. I don't believe so. It's coming off now, sir.
Mr. Grady, weren't you once the caretaker here?
Why, no, sir. I don't believe so.
You, married man, are you, Mr. Grady?
Yes, sir. I have a wife and 2 daughters, sir.
And, where are they now?
Oh, they're somewhere around. I'm not quite sure at the moment, sir.
So he had a wife and 2 daughters.
Mr. Grady, you were the caretaker here. I recognize you. I saw your picture in the newspapers. You, chopped your wife and daughter up into little bits. And, then you blew your brains out.
So we can differ with you, sir.
That's strange, sir. I don't have any recollection of that at all.
Mr. Grady, you were the caretaker here.
I'm sorry to differ with you, sir. But you are the caretaker. You've always been the caretaker. I should know, sir. I've always been here.
So that is interesting because in a way, because we were talking about the photograph thing earlier, and when if he says he's insisting that no, you've always been the caretaker, well, that would kind of answer the question to some extent about the 1921 picture. Because if he's always been the caretaker, or somebody that looks like him has always been the caretaker, then that might be why. But
it could be like a weird, almost Groundhog Day situation.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be a person who always looks like Jack, or whether it be it's like just some weird purgatory kind of cycle maybe that's always going on or something. Yeah, that's quite an interesting theory. Because if anything, it's true when you remember the picture at the end where it's Jack in 1921. He does look younger, and his hair is like nicer. It doesn't look like it did in the regular film where you saw there. He's got kind of a bit of frazzly hair, if you will. Where in the picture it's very clean, it's cut, but he looks younger. So that stands up. That makes a lot of sense. But then 40 years. Because he's not very old in the film or anything. He's got a young kid and everything. His wife doesn't look like she's over 50. I don't know. So there's certainly a lot of questions about this, you know. But I think that's what makes it just all the more amazing to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is what I love about Kubrick, is that he leaves you with just with loads more questions than you had to begin with,
which is just the best. It's great,
puzzling ones, and they're like mysteries, and kind of brain, you kind of keep your brain going on it, and and then of course you want to go back and watch it again and again and again and again
and see if you pick up on anything new or different. And that's why I'm glad I got to rewatch it this morning. And because I remember when I remember bits and pieces when I first watched it way back in the States. I was still like a teenager, so a lot of it I didn't fully capture. A lot of it didn't make a lot of sense to me back then. I just like the fact that it was like there were plenty of horrifying scenes. You've got the classic elevator opens up and there's blood just gushing out. You've got the creepy twins and everything, the occasional like decayed bodies and stuff, and then obviously him chasing everybody with the axe. That was like, whoa, horror, amazing. But the fact there's so much more psychological things going on. The story is incredibly strange and bizarre, and you think it's about ghosts and everything, but it's like there's also the Shining thing that didn't really click in my head way back then. The whole like telepathic thing, there's a power to it. There's like, maybe that's why he's more sensitive to what's going on and everything. And even though the others, because they're in the hotel, can see these ghosts, in normal life they wouldn't, but Danny would, because he's got that gift, which is probably another reason why they kind of go a little, well, Jack goes a lot more hysterical with it, because he's like, oh, losing his mind, whereas Danny, he's like, well, yeah, I can see them. I've seen the dead people and stuff before. It is weird, but it's something he's gotten used to. But for Jack, who's a man, he's lived a life at this point. He's not like old, but it's a completely new and crazy concept to him. While everything else is going on, he's getting the cabin fever. He's started drinking again and stuff. It just it's just compounding the madness that's going on for him, and it makes a lot of sense as to why he snapped when you think about it like that.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're talking about some of the like the scenes, some of the horrific scenes, if you want, or the horror scenes where these ghosts appear, especially to Danny, and it's in particular a recurring one is one with the sisters, the young girls.
Yeah.
Clearly the daughters of Charles Grady or Delbert Grady, whoever, right? Who got chopped up in little bits, and they. But what's one of the other things about this film and other great classic films is the fact that you can tell that it's loved by other filmmakers and other kind of creative types, like other artists, people who make things, because they will reference things like that. So, for example, the scene with the daughters has been well, obviously it's been referenced and copied,
Reference,
and,
parodied,
and,
everything.
and parodied and homage paid to it.
Absolutely.
Such as with the League of Gentlemen, when he got the if you watch the League of Gentlemen TV series, when he got the little girls, little daughters, who do a very similar sort of thing. They kind of show up randomly, and just in a very creepy way, and they kind of scare. I think it's Benjamin, the character Benjamin, because they're just around every corner, they just suddenly pop up, and the actors kind of stood together in a similar sort of talking in a similar way to what they do when the sisters doing the Shining. And I think the interesting thing, I think it has been referenced a lot, and everybody will recognise that. Anybody that knows it really well will recognise that. But the interesting thing is that Kubrick himself, obviously a massive movie fan, and he himself made, and this is something I always like with films as well. Any film or film director who does this a lot, he makes reference to other classic films through history. And I didn't realize this until probably the last decade or so, and I kind of learned it, and I found this fascinating. Is that there's a very classic scene in The Shining where, towards the end, where Jack is breaking into the bathroom. He's got his axe, as he's saying. That's one of the horror scenes where he's smashing the door down. And you're thinking, and that scene is iconic to the film. So most times you see posters or clips from the film, it's often the picture of Jack Nicholson's head poking through the smashed up door.
Here's Johnny. Door.
Yeah, exactly. But that film was that scene and that idea was not original. It's not original Kubrick idea, even though for most people they consider that to be synonymous with the man. He's actually referencing a film 100 years ago called The Phantom Carriage in that film, where that exact same thing happens, where a husband actually, his wife is getting kind of scared of. She locks him in the bathroom, so he's coming the opposite way around. She locks him in the bathroom, and he breaks his way out. He finds something he finds an axe. I don't know how managed to find an axe in the bathroom. Maybe he took it in with him. I don't know. But he finds
kind of an axe. I mean, who knows what was going on 100 years prior?
the tension building up as he smashes that door, and that's a silent movie. But if it's also that film, which clearly Kubrick loved, is a film which has been referenced a heck of a lot in all kinds of other movies and TV series, TV programs. So I just recommend if you've never been really into silent films or not really dabbled with them, or you're thinking, right, let's have a look at something that might appeal to me. And if you're into horror, if you like The Shining, it's worth having a look at The Phantom Carriage. It's on YouTube and it was made in 1921. It's a Swedish film. And I when I discovered that the references in The Shining to that film, I went and took a look at it, and I've got to tell you, it's a good film. It's got some great references. It's got and there's elements which were stolen later by the Scrooge movies and stuff like that. The elements of that film have been used a lot. It's a ghostly film. It's a brilliant ghost movie from 1921. It's The Phantom Carriage. So that's one example of I mean, Kubrick's reference, and he's stolen from all kinds of things in his movies. But I think that's a really interesting example.
That is quite interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people who never knew that. So I certainly didn't. That's great. That's incredible. Phantom Carriage, 1921. There you go. A film recommendation for you.
It's freely available on YouTube. So
yeah, even better. Free movie night, 1921. That's crazy cool. I think what else we could talk about when it comes to The Shining, because I think we've mostly mentioned kind of what happens. I mean, obviously Jack begins to lose his mind and everything. There's even the great scene where Wendy's basically quite in fear of everything that's going on, especially with his demeanor changing, and their son Danny gets kind of strangled at one point. It's off camera, you don't see it happen, but he comes in with these strangle marks on his neck, and she believes it was Jack who had done it, because it's like there's only the three of us in the hotel. It had to have been one of us. Daddy wouldn't have done it to himself. It had to have been Jack, kind of thing. And she confronts him, saying like, "Oh, it's you did this to him," and blah blah blah. But he's not where he's typically typing at the moment, and she goes over and he's got the stack of papers, the things he has been writing, and all it says on every single piece it's in like different styles and everything, so it looks like he's been writing a proper book. But all it says is all work and no play make Jack a dull boy. Just pages and pages and pages of just paragraph sentences, all the same thing. It's just like And it's like, okay, you can really see he's really starting to lose his mind. And it is a drawn out scene because she literally like flips through pages, and look at the typewriter, pages, and it's longer and it's drawn out. And you're like, okay, we get it. He's losing his mind. But eventually he shows up. They have their little squabble back and forth. She's quite scared of him because he's really starting to kind of lose it. And she's got her bat. She's ready to like hit him and stuff because she's like, okay, look, he's clearly off his rocker. Everything's going crazy. I don't know if he's going to hurt us and stuff. And he ends up saying, in that confrontation, as he's kind of slowly chasing her up the stairs, you know, like, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to bash your brains in. And it's like, okay, he's definitely, we know his intentions now. And she ends up clocking him with the bat, which is great. Locks him in the food walk-in and stuff. And it's just, you're seeing all this stuff just go on, and it's just incredible. And then she's like, okay, even though he's like locked away and stuff, he regains consciousness, and he's like, you got to let me out. And she's like, no, I'm gonna take the snowcat. I'm gonna take our son. I'm gonna get us out of here. This is all just too much. You know, this is crazy. You need a doctor. Blah blah blah. Trying to make sense, but still everything's like just insane. But they're stuck in the middle of a snow blizzard, so it's like you have very little choice of what's going on. And Jack's just like, you can't check the snowcat. You can't leave, and it's because he's already sabotaged the only way they can get out. And that's another thing you don't see on camera, but it's just like, it's amazing that all these little things are going on. And it's like, look, we made sure you can't do this. We made sure you can't do that. It's so cool. But because at the very like early part of the film, when Danny learns about the Shining and what it means, and he's shining with the older man Dick, because now they have like a strange connection. I guess that's how the Shining kind of works. It's one of the abilities. We get more in depth in Doctor Sleep about how all that works. But Dick is kind of still in kind of communication with Danny, and he's a bit aware of what's going on at the hotel. He ends up making his way out to the hotel in order to kind of like save them, get them out of there and stuff like that. So it's just incredible. The whole thing, I mean, you get a whole rundown of how Dick, you know, he gets on a plane, he takes a car, he gets a snowcat of his own, gets his way all the way up to the hotel, and it's just incredible. It's just absolutely incredible.
And then it all ends up with something shocking, which, again, if you've not seen it, we've pretty much taken it apart, but, you know, we won't spoil that part.
Yeah, we won't spoil everything for you.
No.
You have to do some of the work yourself, you know? I mean, come on. If you haven't seen The Shining by now, what are you doing?
Yeah. You definitely need to be watching it. If you listen to this podcast or watching this podcast and you haven't seen The Shining, you know you're going to need to go and see The Shining after this.
You need to. If you like horrors, if you like psychological horrors, thrillers, anything like that, if you like Stephen King at all,
or Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, honestly.
And if you like Stanley Kubrick, there's absolutely no excuse for not having seen.
You have to see it. You have to see it. And if you've seen it already, see it again. Just for good measure, because like I said, I'm glad I rewatched it, because there were so many more things I picked up on this time. Because I didn't even realize the whole Shining thing was such a big deal, and I knew it was like the name of the film and everything, and I knew it was based on a book, but I didn't quite understand just how relevant it was. And then it's even more important in the follow-up film, Doctor Sleep. I mean, it really gets fleshed out a whole lot more. There's more to the whole power aspect of it and everything. It's just, it's worth a rewatch, because our meeting will end in 10 minutes.
Well, we've been talking a lot, haven't we?
I mean, it's just what we do, but that's part of the fun. I mean, like we said, this is such a monumental film. It deserves it. It absolutely deserves it.
And one last thing before we switch to and talk a little bit more about Doctor Sleep, and we venture into that particular movie and some of the connections between the two. One last thing to say about Shelley Duvall's performance, because as you mentioned there, she was getting to kind of freaking out when especially when she totally gets the idea and she realizes that she doesn't want to believe. She thinks that Jack must have attacked Danny, but she doesn't really fully want to believe it until she sees the pieces of paper, as you've seen, and then she starts to realize this guy is a psycho. He's gone over the top.
He's totally lost it.
Her performance, Shelley Duvall's performance as the character Wendy, is again, it's mesmerizing. It's kind of over. It's always overplayed by, you know, because Jack Nicholson played such a great part, and he always gets all plaudits. But Shelley Duvall, the way she captures the kind of sheer terror of the situation, she does it extremely well. And part of the reason for that, she's a brilliant actress, of course, and I've seen her in other things as well where she's performed extremely well. But in this particular movie, Stanley Kubrick directed her in a certain way, quite a nasty way, really, because he was particularly mean to her and deliberately kept her on edge throughout filming. Certainly through certain scenes,
in order to capture
certain
the
parts.
authentic feel. I see.
He gave her a really, really hard time. He treated her really badly. It made her feel like she was not performing very well on purpose, because he wanted to keep her on edge. He wanted to create that
tension,
emotion within her, and bring that out of her much more.
Terrible. And, I mean, you really get it.
It is, and it's also something else that's in common between Kubrick and Hitchcock, because Hitchcock is known for doing that especially with his female leads, and in particular with Tippi Hedren in The Birds, where on purpose, just deliberately, probably for different reasons in Hitchcock's case, more perverted, but he wanted to, he really wanted to make her suffer. And he did on purpose. For him, he'd say his excuse was to draw out the real kind of tension and the terror. But really, I think he was getting a bit of a kick out of it. Whereas Kubrick, I don't think he was getting a kick out of it. I think he really, really felt that the best way he could get this sheer sense of complete, distress on the part of the female lead is by putting her in that situation where she just generally felt it. So that added to her performance.
So I think we'll kind of end it with at least the Shining part. What ends up happening after Jack breaks out of the walk-in freezer, thanks to the help of the ghosts, always tied to the ghosts, is he goes on a rampage basically with an axe. He does the axe scene with the door. Dick shows up, gets killed. Terrible, but his snowcat's running and it's there. Really convenient. Jack chases his son because his son is terrified and he's aware that Dick has died because of the Shining. So Jack chases him out into the frozen hedge, which is also the crazy hedge maze. Danny, being quite clever because he knows his dad's kind of losing it right now, and he ends up kind of making him walk around in circles in this big old hedge maze, and he's covering up his tracks. So that way he's following footprints that go nowhere. And it's incredible. So Danny ends up linking up with his mum once he escapes. They get in the snowcat and they leave. And Poor Jack is just stuck in the hedge maze. It's a blizzard. He's freezing. He's just suffering. He's not able to do anything, and he ends up sitting down and he freezes to death. And you get that great iconic scene of he's all just frozen, just stuck in there, and it's crazy. And that's essentially how it ends. I think we have to mention it. It's just such a powerful scene. It's just great, and also important in Doctor Sleep is that hedge maze. It is very important, especially the fact that it's all wintry. That will come up again. It's quite an important aspect, which is why I think it does deserve to be brought up. And also the ghosts, big part of The Shining, but at the same time very underplayed in some aspects. But I think it just helps add fuel to the fire without being the big fire itself about the Overlook Hotel. And yet again, the hotel it plays an important role in Doctor Sleep, which we'll talk about when we set up our next little meeting in just a couple of minutes. We'll probably end this one here for the second, and I'm going to go pee, and then we'll link back up. I'll let you start the next one, and we'll...
recharge me. Yeah, I'll start like 24 minutes, yeah. About 5 minutes.
Yeah. Right? See you in a bit.
That's what I was meant to be opening up with. Like that. I did leave it like that, and then I had to fiddle about and I did leave it like that.
That's okay.
I had to fiddle about and get things corrected.
Yeah.
Got a cat here. I spilt my beer everywhere when I opened my IPA. All over the bloody well.
Yeah.
I seem to have lost my. Let's see. Oh, there we are. Yeah. So I'm just having. Your mum just finished made a bit of tea as well. So.
Oh yeah.
Here we are. A bit of spinach, cream spinach dip.
Oh, nice.
Well,
Yep.
Hands up a minute. On the track. I need to just get another cloth to wipe the floor. On track.
All right.